Hey everyone, Tiv here again, with a bit of an update on our housing crisis. Things with bills and groceries are pretty rough right now, but we're still trying to get moved out and get out of Wisconsin. The job search has been really brutal and we're just barely keeping afloat right now, so if you can, please donate to or share the GoFundMe link in this short's description. We're hanging on, but it's obvious we still need a lot of help. So I've actually got two Dinobot toys to talk about today, but before we do, why don't we take a little trip down Dinobot memory lane. Now in the beginning, all we had was the OG Dinobot, looking like raw chicken, but carrying an imposing presence nonetheless. And being posable not just for a Transformer at the time, but for an action figure in general in that era. Now Takara eventually got the colors right later when they released it in their markets. But either way, I've always thought the Beast Mode felt just a little bit messy. That said, I do guess Hasbro and Takara were pretty proud of this one because they'd use it again, and again, and again, and again.
2,000 years later.
And again, and again, and again, and again. Until like 2009 when they eventually released the Universe/NK Dinobot. Unless you're counting the Armada hoist recolor, which you really shouldn't. It's not meant to represent the same sort of thing. It's not a dinosaur at all. Now, the Universe/NK Dinobot was kinda like the previous one, even with needing Takara to get the colors. But with the engineering of the time, it was pretty alright. And for years, we'd be in a situation where NK Dinobot was just the Dinobot to get. Until like 12 years later, when we would have one of the toys we're reviewing today, Kingdom Dinobot, who you can also have in raw chicken colors for some reason. Am I reading that right? But why? Anyway, in comparison, our other contender today has only ever been redecoded/remolded once. Our friendly neighborhood Frankenstein clone, Dinobot 2, labeled simply Transmetal 2 Dinobot. He was surprisingly reused in the Dinobot subline of Beast Machines to make the character Rapticon. And given this guy has less of a legacy to compare to, well, let's start with Dinobot 2 when it comes to the review. Now for this vid, we're actually going to be starting in Beast Mode for these guys, as it was the style at the time to package bots in their alt mode. I'm admittedly a tad nostalgic for those days, as despite the art, it almost made it exciting to reveal the robot through transforming it for the first time. Now, starting with Dinobot 2's aesthetics, the blues against the kind of creepy off-whites really give him a vibe of some sort of ghoulish undead mutant raptor. Like a Deathclaw skeleton partially raised from the dead by some sort of cyber lich. And if you look closely in the mouth, you'll notice what's either supposed to be a forked tongue or a secondary xenomorph-esque tongue mouth. And when it comes to his posability in this form, it really isn't the most optimal given the limits of the soft rubbery tubes all over his body, but he's still much more posable than he will be in robot mode. You can still get a decent amount of pouncing poses and a few goofier ones to boot. But that said, he almost feels more like a quadrupedal monster in this form than a true mutant theropod. Now the transformation is relatively simple. Now, despite the simplicity of the transformation, the bot we're ultimately left with really isn't all that posable. His tail whip is frankly too heavy for him, and unlike other Transmetal 2 figures of his size class, he doesn't even really have a waist joint. On top of that, his stubbier legs and weird rubbery cables get in the way of most poses you might want to get him in. And I mean, when it comes to his aesthetics, they are honestly on point for an evil undead clone of our favorite Raptor, but they're so hampered by the robot mode articulation that it really simply cannot shine through. As for our Kingdom bad boy, the Raptor aesthetics are on point. It's a compromise between scientific observation and the iconic imagery presented in Jurassic Park that Beast Wars had been inspired by. The face sculpt and hand poses really do simply add so much personality to the mold, though I do have to admit, I really did want to see them give him feathers this time. I really think it would have worked with his design and scale pattern. The usual browns would translate really well into hawk-like feather patterns, I think. As for the Raptor's posability, it's really not enormous, but it's there enough to give him a bit of expression, have him threaten this Ungoy, and play the piano at least. And now the transformation. It's simple, fun, and intuitive, so let's go and do it. And in robot mode, he is just... He is perfect. The aesthetics are just a masterful representation of Dinobot, his sword, and the rotating shield / rotate blade that he had in the cartoon. He's got a beautiful head sculpt, and it's super well painted to boot. And when it comes to his posability in this form, it's better than the best Marvel Legends. You can get him into basically any pose you might want out of him. And I do mean any pose. The only bit that could make his articulation any better would be if they give him an ab crunch, which, I mean, I'm not expecting that at a $30, $40 price budget. Now, if you can get this guy at an affordable price, and from my most recent check, you can on eBay, I really do recommend picking him up. Or the very slight Rita Coates car is released as part of their Beast Wars Again toy line. But with all that said, I've been Tiv, your all-stars, and I'll see you next time. Moo!